that rock and roll music to come in. Hey guys, thanks for joining us today. We're broadcasting to you live right now via Facebook and YouTube. My name is John Tenora, and this is the What's on Sports podcast, where we talk about everything that is all around sports, including your favorite NFL stuff. We give away picks. We talk about fantasy. It's really pretty much a good time. We also invite you guys along the way to join us in the chat so you guys can add along to the show. Now, as much fun as it would be to just stare at me, we'll also have other people on the show throughout the length of the show, including Lance Fernandez, the sports nerd, who I'm going to bring out in just one second. But before we go any further, I just want to remind everybody that our show is brought to you by our sponsors. Ladies and gentlemen, that's right. It's sportstradingsystems.com. If you're watching at home, you can see everything. You can see it right on the screen. Sportstradingsystems.com is what we're talking about. You guys can go ahead and check it out. Learn how to trade sports like other people trade stocks. Our friends at Sports Trading Systems have made their followers probably a combined amount of millions of dollars. Go over there today and check it out. If you like to gamble, if you like to invest, with all the stuff going on in the stock market, you can finally see that the big guys will never let you make any money in the markets, but this is a new way to invest. So go over and check out sportstradingsystems.com and tell them that we sent you there. Right now, I'm going to bring in our co-host, our guest, whatever you want to call him. Joining us right here, right now, we call him the sports nerd. Ladies and gentlemen, Lance Fernandez is here. Lance, how are you?
I'm doing great, John. So excited. We haven't had a podcast for like a week, so I'm ready and pumped up to give more stats and facts about your favorite players and your favorite games.
Oh, I love that. I can feel your enthusiasm too. Like you are definitely pumped up. Well, listen, we got a big show to go over today, and a lot of great things happening in sports. And as you can see by the chyron at the bottom of the screen, the very first thing that we're going to talk about is Deshaun Watson, and it's the talk that everybody's been talking about. It's probably the first time that I can remember, at least, and you can remind me if you know of a different time this has happened, where a 25-year-old quarterback, really who probably hasn't even hit the prime of his career yet, is going to leave his team and go to another team. You know, most of the people in the NFL have got to be super excited about what possibly could happen. I mean, sitting around thinking, oh man, can I team get Deshaun Watson? I mean, a lot of great stuff out there. What are you hearing about this Deshaun Watson thing?
Okay, so Deshaun Watson, this is a script that we usually don't see in the NFL, but this is a script taken from the NBA, wherein they get a whim that they want to play for this team and ask for a trade for that team. And we just saw a mega blockbuster deal with James Harden involving 4 teams. So picture this. The power lies with Deshaun Watson because he has a no-trade clause. So even if the Texans would deal with a team that he doesn't want, he still has that power. So he has to veto that no-trade clause first before a trade will manifest. And who wouldn't want to have a Deshaun Watson? Because here are some crazy stats about his season. So he had 104 touchdown passes, 17 rushing touchdowns in his career. According to Elias Sports, he's the only player in NFL history with at least 100 touchdown passes and 15 rushing touchdowns in his 4 seasons. So you get the aerial game and the ground game with Deshaun Watson. And here's another one. Deshaun Watson averages 301.4 passing yards per game and completed 70.2% of his passes the last season. He became the second quarterback in NFL history to average 300 passing yards per game while completing at least 70% of his passes in a single season, the first being Drew Brees in 2011. But here is the contrast. Drew Brees led the Saints to a 13-3 record that season, while the Texans with Deshaun was at 4-12.
Well, look, I think the comparison is valid to say that Watson could become a Brees-like player. There are some differences. Obviously, Watson can move around the pocket. Now, Watson is not, contrary to like a lot of popular opinions, and even based around your stats, you're looking at 17 rushing touchdowns. It sounds like he's running all over the place. Deshaun Watson isn't actually running all over the place. He doesn't use his legs that much to gain yardage. Now, he will pick up one or two along the way, but he's not Lamar Jackson. Deshaun's really running around just trying to extend plays. He's a far more athletic Big Ben with probably a bigger arm, maybe a better understanding of the game at that age. The other thing I would say is bringing up his record this year is a little unfair Bill O'Brien, who was the coach who got fired halfway through the season, literally dismantled that team. Got rid of his best wide receiver. I mean, you could see the huge difference in the fact that Deshaun just couldn't chuck it up and have Hawkins or I just forgot his name. Who did they trade to Arizona? I'm sorry, it just slipped my mind.
DeAndre Hopkins.
DeAndre Hopkins, not Hawkins. Hopkins. You couldn't just chuck it up to Hopkins. So his wide receiver core was hurt. It just wasn't the same team without Hopkins. Now, that's not to say that he absolutely positively needs to go somewhere where there's a superstar like Hopkins, because those guys are rare. But it is to say that he is better, I think, with weapons around him. He had to do far too much, and that goes for every quarterback. He had to do far too much by himself this year to really represent himself the way I think he can. You bring a Hopkins in, you give this guy a running game, or you put him on a team that's got a defense that can actually stop somebody. I think this guy could take you deep in the playoff runs and possibly get you a Super Bowl along the way.
Yeah, I do see that happening. And there are currently 5 teams that are in the running. So let's see your criteria for Deshaun Watson's formula for success. So there are 5 teams that are in the running, but according to articles that have been floated in the internet, be it by Deshaun Watson or probably by the Texans, the 2 teams that are in the running or the front runners for Deshaun are the Miami Dolphins and New York Jets. Fascinating that they're both in the AFC East. But before we get to that, the other 3 teams on the fringe are the Carolina Panthers, the Denver Broncos, and the San Francisco 49ers. So 3 teams that either have a quarterback controversy or doesn't have a steady quarterback at all. So they are all valid trade destinations for Deshaun Watson, but experts, fans, and everybody have been telling that it's either Miami or New York because they have the draft capital, they have the cap space.
Yeah, very true.
Insider story, maybe the Texans is just trying to pit those 2 teams against each other because they are in the same division. So imagine the hell that the other team will get if they don't trade for Deshaun Watson.
Well, there's a couple things I would say. If I'm the Texans, I really don't want to trade Watson to an AFC team. I really don't. I want to trade him to the NFC. I don't want to have to deal with him. But if I have to trade him to the NFC, I certainly don't want to trade him in my division. So I had seen somebody talking about Indianapolis being a possibility. That's certainly not going to be it. If I'm Watson and you're narrowing down my choices to Miami or the Jets, because those are the teams that have the most draft capital, look, I'm taking Miami all day long. Why would I want to go to New York? First of all, the Jets are a terrible team. They've been a terrible franchise for a long time. They don't have a lot of weapons. They don't have wide receivers. They don't have running backs. They don't even have a great offensive line. And they may have a good coach, but we're not even sure about that yet. So I'm not sure I want to go to New York. Put on top of that the fact that New York has incredibly high state income tax. It's the COVID capital of the world. I'm not sure I want to go to New York City. It sounds glamorous. It sounds exciting, but I'm not sure it sounds as exciting to me as, say, Miami, with a really good coach, with a really good defense, with a couple weapons along the way, an offensive line that maybe needs 1 or 2 pieces to be elite. To me, if I'm Watson and I'm the Texans, I'm pushing Miami as much as I can. Now, I think you're right. I think you make a valid point that the Texans, if they're going to negotiate the right way, are going to leverage the Jets, San Francisco, whoever they can. But if the idea is to get Miami, if Watson says, I want to go to Miami, and Houston says, okay, let us work Miami, but let us work the Jets without you saying anything. Don't say I don't want to go to the Jets. Don't say I don't want to go somewhere. Give us the opportunity to make the deal for you. If I'm Houston and I'm smart, which I'm not saying the Houston Texans are, if I'm Houston and I'm smart, I'm going to leverage Miami as much as I can. And I'm going to say that if the deal gets done, it's going to be Tua, it's going to be 2 first-round draft choices, and then some scraps. We're looking at maybe another second, a second and a third. I think it's going to be 4 picks, and I think it's going to be a player. That's my opinion, and I think it's going to end up in Miami.
Yeah, with Deshaun Watson, he is 25 years old, and let's project that he would be playing his peak years for at least 7 more seasons. So I believe that the proper package for Deshaun Watson would be both first round draft picks in the upcoming draft. So that's number 3 and number 18. And then they get 5 more in the coming years, be it first or second rounders. I guess that's a fair deal to get from Miami in exchange for Deshaun Watson because he'll be throwing a lot of passing yards anyway for at least 7 years during the prime of his career.
So you think it'll be 5 total picks or 7 total picks?
7 total picks, I guess, but 4 first rounders, 3 second rounders, and then Tua.
And
so they still have a quarterback to work with. And Tua.
I don't know, man.
Because they have to. Deshaun Watson does have the leverage to and the stats to prove that he can make a difference to a team, especially with the Miami Dolphins, who is devoid of that deep passing threat because Tua is afraid of throwing to tight windows. And Fitzpatrick is just doing his magic on the fourth quarter. So it could be one of the things that the Miami Dolphins is lacking, that deep passing threat. And that's where Deshaun Watson might come in. So he is 25 right now. I guess he will be playing his prime year. So I guess he's worth like 7 draft picks.
Look, people say that you should give up anything, absolutely anything for a franchise quarterback. That's what you should do. If you have a shot at a franchise quarterback at 25 years old, you should be able to give up anything. And to me, I don't think you give up everything because you're saying 5 picks. Now, if you're saying a couple of these picks are 5th and 6th rounders, okay, whatever. You got to throw those in there. But if you're talking about 1st, 2nd, 3rd rounders, to me, you have to put value on Tua. So Tua to me was a 1st round pick last year. So he's got value right now. He may not have value as a 1st rounder. Maybe people don't see him as a value as a 1st rounder. But that was a kid that people were talking about tanking their entire season for last year. So if you're going to tank for Tua last year, you see him play this year, and throughout the first few games, he played pretty well. Now, granted, he didn't have the NFL moxie to throw downfield that much yet, but that could change over time. He did it in Alabama. It's a comfort level for him. So throwing him out in the middle of the season and just hoping that he does well and comparing him to Fitzpatrick, I don't think is fair. So let's just imagine that you put a 2nd round value on Tua. Let's just say it's a 2nd round value. And then you give them 2 1st rounders and 2 2nd rounders. I think I would go that far. And then if I'm Houston, I make an evaluation on Tua. And I'm either flipping Tua out right away and flipping him out to somebody else for a 2nd rounder and picking up more draft picks. Or, you go to somebody like the Steelers who are looking for somebody to replace Big Ben, somebody like that, and or New Orleans that might be willing to flip a 2nd rounder over because Peyton thinks he can work. Sean Payton thinks he can work something out with this kid, make him into magic. That's fine. That's the move that I'm going to make. But the thing that I'm not going to do is I'm not going to mortgage my entire franchise. I'm not going to give everything just for Deshaun Watson because then I have nothing to surround him with. Then I've only got money to spend. I don't have any draft capital anymore. So I'm a little hesitant to just go quite as deep as you would say. But I would say, listen, you could have our 2 1st rounders this year, you could have our 2nd rounder next year, and our 2nd rounder in 2023, and Tua. And then I'm Houston. I'm taking that 1st rounder. I'm taking a quarterback, taking the next 1st rounder. I'm flipping that over 2 or 3 times because their general manager comes from the Bill Belichick school of running football teams, which is we don't know what we're going to get in the 1st round. So let's trade out of the 1st round. Let's save money on 1st rounders. Let's get a 2nd rounder and a 3rd rounder for our 1st rounder. That'll give us 2 quality player shots instead of 1. I don't know. That's just how I see it. That's how I see it breaking down. But the Deshaun Watson thing, no matter what happens, Lance, is going to be extremely interesting to me. But what's going to be just as interesting to me is we've never seen a quarterback market like this. Last year we saw a market that had some of the greatest quarterbacks in history all being presented to people at the same time. So you look at it, you had Phillip Rivers as a free agent. You had Tom Brady as a free agent. This was like, wow, I can get one of these guys, but they were kind of past their prime. This year, you've got Deshaun Watson, who's, without a doubt, a top 5 quarterback. And Matthew Stafford, who, when healthy, is that same kind of quarterback, Lance. Matthew Stafford, when healthy, could be a top 7, top 6, top 5 quarterback with the talent that he has and the ability he has to actually run an offense. What do you know about what Matthew Stafford, what's going to happen to him in Detroit?
Okay, so funny you quantified that Matthew Stafford, when healthy, becomes an elite NFL quarterback, and that's a big if. And also a
Mm,
big if he has weapons. Remember what he did, how he inflated his numbers with Calvin Johnson and
mm.
the same team with him. So Matthew Stafford, picture this: 45,109 passing yards, 282 passing touchdowns are the most by a player without a playoff win in NFL history. So that's a lot. 74
Wow.
wins as a starting quarterback is tied for fourth, with most without a postseason win, trailing only Jim Hart, Steve Rogan, and Roman Gabriel. And here's another one. Since Matthew Stafford's rookie season in 2009, Lions receivers led the NFL with 350 drops. Stafford has 7
Wow.
consecutive seasons throwing for at least 4,000 yards from 2011 to 2017. That is the fifth longest streak in NFL history. However, Stafford hasn't thrown 30 touchdown passes since the 2013 season. So he had 20 plus the last season, and he had 4,000 plus yards as well. And he could benefit with a complete offense around him, a backfield that can punch through the line of scrimmage, and able wideouts that can throw his deep balls. So the front runner for Matthew Stafford has to be the Indianapolis Colts, not just because Pat McAfee
Mm.
is aggressively campaigning for it to happen, but there has been rumors that has been floated that assistant GM Ed Dobbs of the Colts went for an interview for the head GM position of the Lions.
Mm.
And eventually they went for Brad Holmes. So Dobbs goes back to Indianapolis. But rumors have been spreading that the Lions were transparent enough to reveal that Matthew Stafford was on his way out of
Yeah.
the Lions. So even before the news broke out, they have been transparent already to all of their candidates that's this is the situation that you're going to face. You don't have an elite franchise quarterback once you take this position. So with that knowledge, Dobbs goes back to Indianapolis and tells his boss that, hey, Stafford is up for playing. And we know what happened now. Even though Philip Rivers still has all the tools and all the power to play one more season, he eventually retired because at the back of their mind, they have a great chance of getting a younger and as equally talented quarterback as Matthew Stafford.
So there's a couple things that you touched on there. And one of the first things I do want to say is you're right. Being honest to a coach before you hire him is super important. You don't want to hire somebody and then put him in a situation where he thought he was getting a Matthew Stafford and he's not. And likewise, if you just to go back to the Texans conversation really quick, when the Texans hired David Culley, who very well could be a really, really great guy. I don't know that for a fact, but David Culley is 65 years old. He's never been a head coach. He's never been a coordinator. And I think that was kind of like the best they could get because it was such an unstable franchise with an unstable quarterback position. But when you take over the Detroit Lions and they tell you, hey, listen, we're going to get rid of Stafford and we're going to rebuild. Okay, now we're going to do that. So what are you going to get for Matthew Stafford? That's really the question now. We're not going to have a franchise quarterback, but what asset do we get back for Matthew Stafford? I think you're 100% right. I see two destinations possible for Stafford. I see three. I see San Francisco as a possibility. Matthew Stafford with the run game and those weapons, San Francisco would be deadly out west. This is a dark horse that no one's talking about. I see the Atlanta Falcons possibly making a run at Matthew Stafford somehow, finding out a way to flip Matthew Ryan, bring Matthew Stafford back home. The only thing that people in Atlanta like more than NFL football is college football. And Matthew Stafford played his college career at the University of Georgia. They would love it if he came back there and into that state to be their quarterback for their NFL team. The other team you mentioned, and to me, it looks almost like it's a no-brainer, and it's going to be the Indianapolis Colts. And the biggest holdup for any of these trades is going to be the asset value that people want to get back for somebody like Stafford. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You're the sports nerd. You know a little bit more about some of this stuff than I do. But I believe Matthew Stafford is 31 years old. And I know for a fact that he's had plenty of injuries and he's missed plenty of games. So to me, that all these things need to be brought into some type of equation to figure out what the value is for a Matthew Stafford. So we talked about Deshaun Watson, saying Deshaun Watson could very well be worth 7 picks. What do you think Matthew Stafford brings back on the open market?
Okay, so because he already has an injury history and he is already in the 30s, I guess he was still worth one or two first round draft choices, and then
Really?
um, yeah, I guess he still has the years. He still has enough in the tank to bring any franchise to a better record, if not the playoffs. So at least
Wow.
he's worth two first round draft picks and one or two third or fourth round draft choices, plus another
Mhm.
player that they would like to get. I guess that's a fair deal because he has proven, Matthew Stafford, that
Wow.
he can play even with a disproportionate franchise like the Detroit Lions, that he can play and he can throw the ball, wing it, and that's why he's still worth like two first rounders and a collection of like third or fourth round draft picks.
Yeah, I wouldn't pay that. I wouldn't if as a Steeler fan, that's my team. If Ben Roethlisberger left tomorrow, we had all the cap space in the world, and somebody said, "Would you give up two first round draft picks for Matthew Stafford and take over the Steelers right now?" I would say no, because you're giving away your future. You're giving away your future for somebody that costs $35 million a year. I look at Matthew Stafford and a guy that's got an injury history, which to me is huge. That guy's got a bulky back. He's been hit more times than probably most quarterbacks have over the course of the last 10 years. I would give a second round draft pick for Matthew Stafford. That's as far as I would go. I may say Matthew Stafford, a second rounder this year, a third rounder next year, spread over the picks. You've obviously made it known that you don't want him. That's the difference when you see an asset. Once I see an asset, you look at Antonio Brown, who was probably at the time of the trade when Pittsburgh traded him to the Oakland Raiders. Antonio Brown, if he wasn't the best wide receiver in football, he was one of the two best wide receivers in football. Absolutely, positively elite, a difference maker. Coming off a season, I believe he scored 17 touchdowns. He was unstoppable that year, but he had become a locker room problem, and everybody knew that he couldn't stay in Pittsburgh anymore. He just couldn't stay there. So Pittsburgh was put in a position where they had no choice but to move him. And what was the value of that? The value of that, because it was known to the public that he wasn't welcome in Pittsburgh anymore and that they had to get rid of him, was a fourth rounder. So when you come out and you tell me that these guys are worth these huge amounts, if there's no real huge market for them, and I don't know that Matthew Stafford's going to have a huge market, Deshaun Watson's a different conversation. 25 years old, elite quarterback. I don't think he's hit a ceiling yet. I think he's still going up. Matthew Stafford, you get what you get. I think you get 3 years out of him. Hopefully he doesn't get hurt along the way. He improves your football team, but I don't see Matthew Stafford being more than a second round pick. That's just my opinion. Let's see which one of us is closer. You think it's two first rounders. I think he's a second rounder. You think Deshaun Watson is 7 picks. Mine was a little different than yours, but whatever. Let's go to the news real quick, Lance. I know a lot of things happen that we don't actually want to spend full segments on, but maybe you can fire out some quick fun things that are happening around all the leagues so we can just touch on them real quick.
Okay, so first news we have on board is pro boxing. Canelo Alvarez and Billy Joe Saunders have agreed to a deal for a super middleweight title unification bout during the Cinco de Mayo week. So this is big news, and this is already signed. So who do you think will have an advantage in this fight, John?
Who's getting paid more? I think that's the most important part. Do you know the numbers of who's getting paid more?
I guess it's still disclosed, but the fight has been set in stone.
I like Alvarez in this fight. I just think he's got the moxie to really win this fight. I know that some people are fans, and for some reason, some people are not. That guy draws a lot of attention on both sides, but I think your best boxers do. For me, boxing is almost dead. So there's only a few guys like Alvarez and your heavyweight champ that can really draw anymore. So for me, I'm going to take Canelo Alvarez. How about you?
Well, Canelo is the best boxer in boxing so far, but Billy Joe Saunders is a tough cookie. So it won't be an easy fight. So the way I'm seeing it is Canelo winning by knockout by like the 10th or 11th round.
Okay. Interesting. 10th or 11th round. I'm going to say 4th round knockout for Canelo Alvarez. Write it down. Let's see which one of us is closer. What else you got?
Okay, so Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal has been lighting up NBA so far, scoring 40 points per game in like the last 3 games that they had in Washington. But
Mm.
unfortunately, their record is 3 wins, 11 losses. So there was this one picture wherein he was alone and he really looked frustrated after a loss. And then a reporter asked him about it, and he came up with this fantastic quote: "Is the sky blue?" So he didn't really answer it directly, and his face would tell that he is really frustrated with what's happening with Washington. So my question for you, John, is a Bradley Beal trade imminent this season, and to where?
I think when they brought in Russell Westbrook this year, they really thought that Beal and Westbrook could be their 1-2 punch. And I don't doubt that they still think that that's possible. I think that when you have that 1-2 punch, and even the Lakers went through this whenever LeBron brought in his little brother up there to play with them. When you have that 1-2 punch, it takes a minute for all the guys around you to actually understand what their role is. Every NBA, well, just about, I don't want to say every NBA player, but almost every NBA player at some point was the man on his team, whether it was high school or college, and even sometimes in the pros. And in order for a team to really win, people have to be able to subject themselves to say, I'm not the man anymore. I'm the guy who gets all the rebounds and does all the dirty work. I'm the guy they bring in to be the defensive stopper. I'm the guy who might get 4 shots a game. I'm the guy who might not be allowed to shoot at all. I might be the decoy who just stands outside and creates space for the superstars. So I think Washington really has to figure that out. And I don't think I see Beal being traded unless it's a huge blockbuster deal that brings them back another superstar. And I think you'd have to find another superstar who's unhappy, who wants to go to Washington, and to make that happen. And you'd have to find someplace that Beal actually fits too. Beal plays a small forward, so you have to find another team that's in need of a 3, and move them over that way. I would like to see what Westbrook and Beal can put together. I don't think 14 games is enough of a sample size to see what's going to happen. I think you have 2 elite scorers, two elite basketball players, 2 elite athletes on the same team. I think you just have to figure out the guys that are going to work around them to actually make them into a better team, as opposed to you coming on the show and telling me that Bradley Beal scored 40 points 3 games in a row. I think it's an interesting fact. I don't think that tells me the Washington Wizards are a very good team.
Okay, so next on the list, we go back to the NFL, and it's your team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. So,
Boom.
according to team owner Art Rooney II, Steelers quarterback Ben Roethlisberger wants to return for an 18th season. However, the biggest concern, as we all know, is his cap hit, the $41 million cap hit. So that would hinder them making this deal possible. However, Ben Roethlisberger told The Athletic's Ed Boucher, "I don't care about my pay at all this year." So, will he be back, and how much will he be paid?
All right. Well, first of all, his name's Ed Bouchette. I'm from Pittsburgh. Ed Bouchette's been a writer for a very long time there. Nobody knows how to say his name the right way. And Bouchette actually has a direct line to Ben. So I saw the tweets. He said he actually spoke to Ben, and this is what Ben said. So there are a few things that I'll touch on. First of all, at $41 million, the Pittsburgh Steelers could not possibly bring back Ben Roethlisberger. It is impossible to bring back Big Ben at that price. I believe the salary cap, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they're talking about the salary cap being $177 million next year. That would mean that Ben would take up almost 25% of the cap at that price. And you cannot win with a team like that, with a team like Pittsburgh, who has a lot of established veterans that are making money and a quarterback making $41 million. I think Ben coming back at somewhere in a manageable cap range of $25 million would be fine. The problem comes into the fact that I believe Ben Roethlisberger is guaranteed for prorated bonuses and everything somewhere in the neighborhood of $19 million. So I don't know what he means when he says I'm not coming back for the money. So would he play for $1 million and his bonus and play for 20 total? That would be a magnanimous hero move that would make Ben Roethlisberger, not that he's not legendary already, but it would make him like a god in Pittsburgh. People would go crazy for that. Will he do that? There's something in Bouchette's statement that really needs to be taken apart. Ben Roethlisberger said, well, I've already approached the team. It was my idea for me to take a pay cut and to go forward. I do not believe that that's true. I believe that Ben on occasion tries to make himself into the hero of every story. That's Ben Roethlisberger. It's been Ben Roethlisberger. It's one of those character traits we just accept in him. So I don't believe that that's true. I could be wrong, but I don't believe in my heart that that's something that was actually true. But because he said it out loud now, because he said money doesn't matter, you got to put your money where your mouth is. When you say your money doesn't matter, well, you got to show me money doesn't matter. So when you're asking me how much, I say Ben's due 19. I say give him his 19, and then I say you give him $1 million or whatever the league minimum would be for somebody of his tenure. Let him play for the league minimum. Show us that you really want to win a Super Bowl, Ben. And we promise to go spend the money to get the team around you built so that you can make a Super Bowl run.
I guess that's a fair deal, 20 to 25 million for 1 year. It's like what Philip Rivers got in his final year. Okay, so moving on to the Kansas City Chiefs, who will be playing in Super Bowl 55. So they are still the favorites to win with a minus 3.5 betting odds. However, some injuries may have odds makers think otherwise. So Eric Fisher already out of the game with an injury.
Huge.
And
That's
another casualty, William Gay Jr., is also out. Willie Gay Jr. was forced to undergo knee surgery for a torn meniscus, and he will also be out for Super Bowl
linebacker,
55.
right?
Yes, sir. Linebacker. So how do you see those absences playing to the hopes of the Chiefs winning back-to-back Super Bowls?
Well, I think the biggest one I see is Eric Fisher. Two of the things that, well, it was actually one thing, but for both AFC and NFC championship games, not enough credit has been given to both teams for the pass rush that they put on. I mean, Aaron Rodgers was under fire the entire game. Aaron Rodgers was just being rushed by 4 the entire game. Tampa's pass defense was fantastic because it came from the front 4. And the same thing can be said by Kansas City. Now, Kansas City did a little different. They ran some zone blitzes. They ran some little exotic tricks and things like that to get pressure, but they got a lot of pressure on people. So the offensive lines, to me, are the focal point of what we need to concentrate with coming up for the Super Bowl. And with Eric Fisher, who, if you don't know who Eric Fisher is, Eric Fisher plays left tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs. He was the number 1 pick in the draft years ago. Very talented guy, protects Patrick Mahomes' backside. Without Eric Fisher playing, that is a huge, huge hole. Now, Kansas City has 2 weeks to get somebody ready. But I think if I'm Tampa, I'm going to attack the left tackle position where Eric Fisher should be all day long. I'm going to run different blitzes. I'm going to run different stunts. I'm going to try to confuse that left tackle. I'm going to do everything I can to get to Patrick Mahomes and make Patrick Mahomes feel uncomfortable. Now, with all that being said, Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. And even when he's uncomfortable, even when he's off script, when he's forced to be off script, he makes amazing plays. So if you're asking me about the line, if you're asking me about the game, I think that's what you watch with the game. If you're asking me, will it change the line? I don't think so. I think the only thing that changes the line moving forward is where the money goes. So we'll know in the next 4 or 5 days where the money's going. If you see the line start to move closer and closer to even, then you know that a lot of money's being put on Kansas City. I'm sorry, on Tampa. If the line starts moving the other way, then you know it's going the other way. So to me, I don't think those injuries are going to matter as far as the line goes. I think what does matter is when you watching this from a philosophical standpoint, I think you really got to be watching these offensive lines to see how they can put it together because both teams can rush the quarterback.
Okay, so final quick fire news for today. So we still are in Super Bowl 55. So we are just weeks away, or 1 week away precisely, for the big game. And we have, in first time ever, a home team playing in a Super Bowl. That is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So it has been reported already that there will be 22,000 people in Raymond James Stadium, 7,500 of which are vaccinated frontliners. So that's
you know what? And you know what? And that's huge. The NFL did such a great job of that. Just want to interject here. That was such a great, touching thing for them to do.
Yeah. So we have 7,500 frontliners who are vaccinated, and the rest of the tickets go to fans. But the prices of the tickets have been escalating. So the most expensive tickets to Super Bowl 55, John, at SeatGeek, it's 336,000 pesos, dollars already. Sorry. So you have StubHub, 347,600, and Vivid Seats at 365,148. So that's the ceiling. And the cellar, The cheapest tickets for SeatGeek, $6,130. Vivid Seats, $6,134. And StubHub, $5,980. So, John, given those high prices, would you buy a ticket to Super Bowl 55?
Well, let me tell you something. This is a true story, Lance. I've been to 3 Super Bowls before. So I've been very blessed with the fact that I went to 3 Super Bowls. The first Super Bowl, and I don't remember the number. It was New England versus Philadelphia. Pittsburgh was on fire that year. I thought for sure they were going to go to the Super Bowl. I had a connection to an NFL player whose name I won't say on this podcast. Maybe I'll say one day. But he was a friend of a friend. Let's just say it like that. He gave me four Super Bowl tickets. He asked me to do him a favor, and he said, "What do you want in return?" And I said, "Just give me 4 Super Bowl tickets," as a joke. He showed up and gave me 4 Super Bowl tickets. So it didn't cost me anything. I flew to Jacksonville to see that game. I sat next to a guy who was a Philadelphia fan. He was so into the game. He was going crazy. At one point, he looked at me, Lance, and he said, "Man, what'd you pay for your ticket?" And I kind of paused and didn't answer. And he said, "I had to mortgage my house to get this ticket." And I laughed, thinking it was a joke. He's like, "Oh, no, I'm serious. My wife's going to kill me if Philadelphia doesn't win." I told her I had to come, and if the Eagles, because if I don't come, the Eagles are going to lose. So I said, "So what'd you pay for your ticket?" He said, "I paid $7,000 for this ticket." So that was a guy sitting next to me. He paid $7,000 for one ticket. Plus, when you go to a Super Bowl, the hotel rooms are jacked up, the flights are jacked up. The guy probably spent $12,000 on a 1 week, a weekend vacation to go to Jacksonville. I went to 2 more Super Bowls, one of which was Pittsburgh versus the Seattle Seahawks. And then I went to go see Indianapolis versus Chicago. I paid about $5,000 for each one of those tickets. Was it worth it? Yes. I can just now got to tell you a story about how I was at a Super Bowl. At the halftime show for Indianapolis versus Chicago, it started raining. Out of nowhere, it just starts raining. And they're like, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Prince." And Prince walked out, the artist known as Prince, walked out and sang Purple Rain in the rain in Miami. It was fantastic. Was it worth $5,000? Sure. I could tell the story forever. So would I pay that price? Yeah, why not? If I had the money, if you have the money, yes. Now for regular people, I don't know. Is it worth it? A lot of people will spend $5,000 to fly to Thailand or go to the Philippines or go wherever on vacation. And you have those stories and those memories forever. And I think the Super Bowl, to me, a sporting event like that, if you're a true sports fan, would be something amazing. If you had the money, would you go do it?
Oh, definitely I would, but I would have to sell my kidneys to get that amount of money.
That's a valid point. And that is the news with our sports nerd, Lance Fernandez. Thank you, Lance. That was amazing. All right. So for those of you that don't know, we do have a website. The website is whatsonsports.com. You can go over and check it out. There's lots of great articles on there, lots of great cool content, including a brand new article that was just written by, I believe, did Arvin write that?
Yes, it was Arvin. Yeah.
All right. So Arvin wrote this great article over there that is the NBA season is now a quarter of the way through. So these are our MVP power rankings for the quarter of the way through the NBA season. So let's hear what you got there. How many people are on the rankings, first of all?
Okay, so Arvin listed top 5, but there are honorable mentions in the article as well.
All right, so
we'll just get through.
Give me the honorable mentions, and then give me 5 to 1.
Okay, so honorable mentions: Kawhi Leonard, Luka Doncic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Nikola Jokic, and Jason Tatum.
Wow. Some big names on the honorable mention. I mean,
Indeed.
Huge names. I mean, like a lot of people were saying it was going to be Giannis and Luka going head-to-head for MVP this year. So that's surprising.
Yeah, Luka doesn't have the benefits of wins so far, but I guess when Allen's record improve, he will be bumped up the rankings. So those are the honorable mentions so far.
All right, so who's number 5 on your list?
Number 5 is Playoff P, Pandemic P, or MVP Paul George. So George season's averages 24.7 points, 6.6 rebounds, and 4.9 assists per game. So he's trying to put away the stigma of being a playoff non-performer. So he's
Mm.
starting the season hot for the Los Angeles Clippers.
Okay, awesome. Hey, there's a comment coming from out down there. Lance is such a funny guy. Someone thought you were funny.
Oh, somebody just appreciated my comedy. I thought it was deadpan.
Yeah, that was awesome. Who's number 4 on your list?
Okay, number 4 in the list, and he's benefiting from from his tandem mate, his running mate, out for the season, and this is Steph Curry. So he has been shooting the lights out. 29.7 points, 5.2 rebounds, and 6.4 assists per game. That's huge, the 5.2 rebounds, because this is, I believe, the first time in his career that he averaged that many rebounds. And that's both a problem and a solution because he's getting that many rebounds, but we know the real problem is Klay Thompson's absence for the entire year.
Yeah, that's huge. When you look at last year, everybody thought, oh, man, if they can just get Klay and Curry back, get those shooters back, everyone's scoring a lot of points again, this is going to be a completely different team. But it's tough in this NBA. It's very tough to be a one superstar team out there. So I want to see if Golden State makes a move. I'm interested to see if they try to make a short-term move for this year. It'd be very interesting.
Where their name has been floated for Lonzo Ball to have that wingman defender to pair with Stephen Curry. So let's see if that materializes.
Yeah,
so moving on to the third.
Ball might fit.
Ahead.
I just want to say, but Ball might actually fit because, that what they need is a slasher. They need someone who can get to the hoop and take advantage of the space that Curry creates. So that would be interesting. Who's number 3 on your list?
Okay, number 3, somebody that Shaquille O'Neal just recently criticized. So Spider-Man, Donovan Mitchell of the Utah Jazz. So Utah has one of the best of this shorted season, and he is one of the huge reasons why Utah is suddenly having a great start to this campaign. So his numbers, though, are not as good as George and Stephen Curry, but 23.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, and 5 assists is nothing to be shameful about. And the biggest reason why he is a top candidate is because Utah, after all their heartbreaks and after all the early playoff exits, they are showing that they have finally matured and they're playing good ball to start the 2020-21 season.
Yeah, to me, the MVP, I've always said the MVP isn't just about stats. It isn't just about numbers. I advocated for Aaron Rodgers to be the MVP for the NFL throughout the last half of the season. And it wasn't because Aaron Rodgers had the highest QBR. It wasn't because Aaron Rodgers had the most passing yards. It was because Aaron Rodgers was a principal reason why the Green Bay Packers were winning so many games. Like that team was on his back at some points, and that offense was unstoppable. So I go for the same thing in the NBA. To me, it's not about the gaudiest of gaudy numbers. It's about what are you doing to help your team win? What little intangible things are you doing to help your team win? And I got to agree with your list so far. Who's number 2 on your list? And it's okay. I already know number 1 is, and I'm already getting angry. But go ahead. Good. Let me see number 2.
Okay, number 2 on the list, and he's the biggest reason for the team's success so far. So Joel Embiid is number 2 on the list. So the craziest stat about Joel Embiid is that in all of the games that he missed, the 76ers lost by an average of like 12 points per game.
Wow.
So that alone, that fact alone is good for his MVP resume. So if he doesn't play, they lose rather.
That's huge.
So 24.7 points per game. Add to that 11.9 rebounds and 1.8 blocks per game, and also 1.4 steals per match. So he's doing it on both ends, offense and defense. And he's also in the running, obviously, for Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, Joel Embiid showed up this year and just said to himself and to everybody else, this is a big man's game. This is a big man's game, and I'm going to show you how big men play it. And it's good to see, actually. I'm so tired of watching everybody shoot 3-pointers and, everything else. I want to see a big man get in there, knock people around, throw some elbows, block some shots, get some rebounds, dunk the damn basketball. I'm loving what Joel Embiid is doing this year. To me, he's my quarter of the season MVP, to me personally. But I know you got another guy on there, and I guess I'll listen to his name.
Okay, so I hope
I can't
your
believe he's
blood
number one right now.
I hope your blood pressure won't go up, John, with number one. So we can talk with Arvin about this, I guess. But well, LeBron James number one. So just like what we said with Donovan Mitchell having
No.
one of the better records, so LeBron James is also doing the same for the Los Angeles Lakers, and he does have the numbers to show it. 25.2 points per game, 8.7 rebounds, and 8 assists. So LeBron James is the quarter MVP top candidate.
So this article is actually listed on our website, which is whatsonsports.com. Guys, go over and read it. Arvin wrote this, who's the writer for this. Arvin, if you're listening, I couldn't possibly disagree with you anymore. I think that LeBron James is overrated. He's not even the best player on his own team, let alone the best player in the NBA. I disagree with the list completely, simply for the fact that I've learned to dislike LeBron James. And therefore, I will give him as little credit as possible. That's what I do. Thanks for sharing the list with us, though, Lance. I really appreciate it. One thing we never talk about on the show, one thing we hardly ever talk about on this show, I mean, I don't think we've ever talked about it, actually, is baseball. And I know baseball season's far away, but some interesting news popped up that you brought up to me before the show, and I told you to stop talking. You started talking. I was like, I don't want to hear anymore. I don't want to hear anymore because I read a little bit about this. I want to react to it on the show. The Baseball Hall of Fame just came out with their nominees for this year, and you could take over the rest, Lance. Tell us about it.
Okay, so they did have their nominees, and these are stellar names. So the Baseball Writers of America did have a vote on who they think are rightful inductees to Cooperstown, New York. But unfortunately, there are 0 inductees in this year. So that's the first since 2013 that they are not inducting anybody. The closest to getting inducted, so you need to get 75% of the votes to get into Cooperstown to be a Hall of Famer. The closest person or player in this list of candidates so far is Kurt Schilling with 71.1% of the votes. Granted that his percentage has gone up for the past 3 years. So it has constantly gone up. So he is constantly getting support for his Hall of Fame candidacy, but he is still 16 votes short this year. And second on the list is Barry Bonds, 61.8%, Roger Clemens, 61.6%, Scott Rowland, 52.9%, and a shortstop, Omar Vizquel, at 42.9%. So the top 3 vote getters, go ahead.
No, I'm irritated with the process. I'm not irritated at you. I'm irritated with the whole process. So I'm actually for the fact that the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame doesn't let somebody in every year. I think the NFL forces people in order to have a ceremony. They got to have 5 people. They got to have this. Sometimes there just aren't people that are worthy of being in the Hall of Fame. But you just talked about Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, and Kurt Schilling. All 3 of those guys deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Now, if you want to say that Bonds and Clemens don't belong there because of steroids, I could see your argument. You could say they cheated. That's the argument. But I don't get the Schilling argument. Why can't Kurt Schilling be in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame? Now, tell me what you told me earlier.
Okay, so I do agree with the argument that at least for Bonds and Clemens, they did something that altered the result of the game. Schilling, in general, did not do anything, did not alter a ball or anything to change his pitching. So he did not do anything to alter his game. All he did was speak up his mind, essentially. So he did have some controversial tweets about allowing transgenders to go into gender-based comfort rooms in North Carolina. So he did have a controversial tweet there. And he also had controversial remarks about the Capitol riots that just recently happened before Donald Trump left the Oval Office. So those 2 controversial statements, I believe, is what keeps him away from being a Hall of Famer? And this is where I guess the baseball writers are having a struggle separating the player from the person. So, I mean, Ty Cobb, for all we know, he was a racist. I've read this before. Ty
Yeah.
Cobb, legendary baseball
A,
player in the 20s.
a lot of guys in the 20s were racist. I mean, a
Indeed.
lot of them. And then not a few, a lot.
And they were in the Hall of Fame. So Schilling just spoke up his mind with what he sees, and this is his opinion, and he's getting persecuted for it. He's just 16 votes shy, and but still, that's still 16 votes short. So this is where I should make an appeal to the baseball writers that at least for Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, you cannot separate the player from the person because as a player, they really altered themselves to perform better. They
Agreed.
performed up until their 40s. But for all we know, even Kurt Schilling had a disappointing start to his career. It was only during his 30s or 40s that he eventually became that Hall of Fame level type of pitcher. And he did well. He was very fantastic. And he's being persecuted, getting shut out of Hall of Fame consideration just because of controversial tweets. And that's something that I don't understand.
Yeah, you look at like even the NFL has been guilty of it. Terrell Owens had to wait 3 times to get into the Hall of Fame for the NFL. Terrell Owens is a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Indeed.
Now he was also a first ballot douchebag. So he was a jerk when he played. Nobody enjoyed him as a personality. Seeing him talk now, it's almost like there's something almost like misunderstood about him. But at the time, nobody really cared for him. So I can understand why he wouldn't get into the Hall of Fame. From a personality standpoint, but from a player standpoint, that guy was first ballot. There's no reason he shouldn't have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. Period. End of story. And when you look at Kurt Schilling, maybe he's not a first ballot guy, but he's a Hall of Fame guy. He's a Hall of Fame guy because he had great careers, and for me, he was in some truly memorable moments for sports. Now, whether you agree with his philosophy on transgender rights, whether you believe with his philosophy politically, whether you like the fact that he was a supporter of Donald Trump or Melania Trump or the porn star whose last name is Trump, who cares? That's not what this is about. This is only about whether or not you were a good enough player to be a Hall of Fame caliber player. So if there's even a hint of a suspicion that he's not getting into the Hall of Fame because of his political leanings, I think the whole thing is invalid. The whole process needs to be scrapped. These writers who are not taking into account the player, and like you said, only taking into account the person, they all need to have their Hall of Fame credentials taken away from them. They're not the kind of people that we want to be choosing people in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, so just to wrap up this Kurt Schilling argument. So here are his quick stats. So he had a career renaissance from the ages 30 to 40. So his 20 to 30, essentially he was a so-so pitcher. So he was average. It was during the last years of his career that he really became that Hall of Fame pitcher. So he struck out 2,316 batters over 2,272 innings. So that's almost 1 per inning while
That's
winning
amazing.
164 ball games. So he also had 300 strikeout seasons and 3 20-game winning seasons. So that's a strong argument. And also
Absolutely.
one bloody sock. So that one bloody
Right.
sock alone
Right.
is enough for him to be included in Cooperstown. So what's
Yes.
stopping the baseball writers?
Yes, 100%. Look, if you could put together 3 20-win seasons, would you say 4 300 strikeout seasons? 5?
3 also.
3.
3
Okay.
300s
So
strikeout seasons.
those are 3 amazing, absolutely amazing seasons. So yes, I think he's a Hall of Fame player. That's my opinion. Lance, before we go on to the next segment, I do want to remind people of a couple things. First thing I want to do is say hello to my girlfriend who's watching today. She's out there watching the show. Hey, Giselle. And the second thing I want to do is I want to remind everybody that the show is being powered by our friends over at Sports Trading Systems. For those of you that want to learn how to trade sports like other people trade stocks, go over to sportstradingsystems.com. There's some free stuff that you can download. There's also a great shop over there where you can actually buy picks for the weekend. You can dive into the score metrics system of trading sports like stocks, which is basically using back-tested historical data. The truth is, the proof is in the pudding. These guys are up 90% for basketball season. It's only a quarter of the way in. So by their own calculations, if you were to play the entire basketball season using the score metrics process for actually investing in these games, you would be up almost 400% by the end of this year. You got to go over there right now and dive in. It's sportstradingsystems.com. Go today. Tell them we sent you. Now, we do have one last segment that we're going to talk about. I just talked about a different website. Let's talk about our website. Let's talk about the fact that we have a website called whatsonsports.com. You can go over to What's on Sports and read some great articles. And you can also go over there and you can send us like messages. Like, hey, will you answer this question for us? And then we'll actually answer the question for you on the show if your question's good enough. And today we do have three questions. Lance, I do not know these questions. I have not looked at these questions. You are going to throw them at me, and I'm going to give you my best, somewhat educated guess to answer each one of these questions. Let's go with question number 1.
Okay, so this is from Steven of Houston, Texas. So Eric Bieniemy, so Kansas City offensive coordinator, was one of the hottest head coaching prospects during this year. But nobody hired him. So why do you think no team hired Eric Bieniemy?
I think there's more to this than we know. I think for a lot of people, when they talk about Eric Bieniemy, they're talking about Eric Bieniemy because of the color of his skin. So people are saying, well, he's not being hired because he's black, and I don't think that's has anything to do with it. I think that Eric Bieniemy, must not interview very well. If it's me, I think one of the first questions I ask him is, how much of what Kansas City is doing right now, how much of that success are you responsible for? And by that, I mean, okay, are you designing the plays or is Andy Reid designing the plays? Okay, Andy Reid's designing the plays, but you're calling the plays. Okay, you call some of the plays. I think if you start having that conversation with somebody, as somebody myself who's hired managers before, I always have that conversation with somebody. What did you do at your last job? What was your responsibility? Tell me exactly what you did throughout the day. Explain your work day to me. Explain to me how you did this. Explain to me how you did this. There are a lot of people who call people managers that aren't really managers, in my opinion. There are a lot of coaches who think that other coaches are great coaches, and to me they're not. So and maybe they are great coaches. Maybe they are great offensive coordinators, but can they be leaders of men? You look at Harbaugh in Baltimore. Harbaugh was never an offensive coordinator. He was never a defensive coordinator. He was a special teams coach. So he was the special teams coordinator, I guess, if you want to say. But he became, what, as much as I hate to say it, because I'm a Steeler fan, a really great coach. He's a top 5 NFL coach every year. That guy's turned that franchise around 2 or 3 times now and reinvented them into something else. So when you look at Harbaugh, I think he's a great leader of men. The guys that play for him want to play for him. You look at other guys. You look at Bill O'Brien in Texas. Bill O'Brien was an offensive coordinator. He was a nightmare. Nobody wanted to stay in Texas. It was awful. So to me, I think there's something going on with Bieniemy. That's not true. It's a comment I just looked at. Sorry. I think there's something going on with Eric Bieniemy. He's not interviewing right. Something is missing in that process with Eric Bieniemy. Let's go to our next question.
Okay, so next question is from Gunther from Wilmington. So, hi Gunther, if you're watching, what are the chances of Lonzo and LaMelo Ball playing together for the Charlotte Hornets?
I don't know that you would. I just saw this question and thought so many things popped in my head. Let's talk about number one. Number one, imagine if you have Alonzo and LaMelo playing together. You got to deal with their dad. Like their dad's going to be in every game because he's got all his focus in one area. So I think that's not a good thing. That's a down thing. The other thing I would say is I'm sure they would play great together. I'm sure there would be an instant chemistry between these two guys because they've known each other their whole lives. They've played together their entire lives. So I think if you really put those guys together on a professional basketball court, I think there's an opportunity there that those guys could really create something truly, truly special. That's just my opinion when I look at it. Now, unless there's a relationship between them that is combative and I don't know about it, to me, if you could put family on together to play sports together, these guys have been playing out in the backyard, out in the driveway their whole lives. I think that's a win-win, and I think it's a great marketing angle too as well. Some really smart marketing guy can come up with a great slogan for North Carolina, home of the balls, something like that. I think you could really make it work. What are the chances? I don't know. I heard he's on the move. I heard that the New Orleans is trying to move him out and move him around. I'd have to really look at the trade scenarios to really see if it would work. But from a marketing standpoint, I think it'd be a great move for North Carolina. Let's do our last question.
Okay, so this is from Kevin from Minnesota.
0.
So what are the odds of Aaron Rodgers leaving the Green Bay Packers?
All right, to me, this one's easy. Will Aaron Rodgers leave the Green Bay Packers? Hell no. He's not going anywhere. I cannot possibly see a scenario where he leaves. Now, there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, I don't think the Packers want him to go. And number two, I don't think Aaron Rodgers wants to go. They drafted his replacement this year. He came out and proved a point. And he could say he didn't prove a point, and he didn't care, and anything like that. That man came out and played like he was going to prove a point, and he did. He's the NFL MVP, in my opinion. He was absolutely fantastic. Took him all the way to the NFC Championship again. So, no, I don't think you would ever kick out a guy like Aaron Rodgers. We had a conversation earlier about, what would you do with Ben Roethlisberger? Should they pay Ben Roethlisberger $40 million? The answer is no. Even as a diehard Steeler fan, I say, no, you don't pay Ben Roethlisberger that kind of money. Now, tell me Ben Roethlisberger's playing like Aaron Rodgers and ask me if he deserves $40 million, and I say, don't mess with that man's contract because we want him to stick around and play. So I think there is no chance, zero chance at all, Lance, that Aaron Rodgers leaves the Green Bay Packers. I think it's impossible. Impossible. I would bet my house on that. I live in $1 million condo on the bay over here. I would bet that condo that Aaron Rodgers is dressed in green and yellow, wearing a cheese head at the beginning of next year. Is that it? Is that our last question?
Yeah, I guess that's the last question for this episode.
I think I got them all right. I think you asked me 3 questions. I think I got all 3 of them right. My name is John Tedora. That's my boy Lance Fernandez, the sports nerd. You can catch us both over at whatsonsports.com, and you can see us live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Lance, you want to say anything else before you go?
So shout out to my girlfriend because you also shout out your girlfriend earlier. And just enjoy one week to go before the Super Bowl. So let's be excited. I believe we're going to have a close and intense game.
Absolutely. We'll back next week with all of our picks, with some great fantasy information, lots of good stuff like that. My name is John Tedora. One more time, this has been the What's on Sports podcast. If you just caught a piece of it, you can download these things on all of your favorite podcast platforms.